4 years, young minimalists online have been celebrating a brand new 72-hour decluttering routine, proudly presenting it as a modern breakthrough. What they don't realize is that the system they are calling revolutionary is almost identical to the quiet, steady household rhythm older Americans grew up with in the 1950s. Back then, homes weren't managed through apps or elaborate charts. Life followed a simple flow that kept things grounded without draining your energy. And if you've ever felt out of place in today's fast, trend-driven version of minimalism, this might be the first time a decluttering video actually feels like it sees you. Because the truth is, you already lived the blueprint everyone else is rediscovering. You just didn't know the world would come back around to it. That brings us to Movella June Holleran, age 68, a retired post office clerk with a warm laugh and a soft spot for handwritten notes. She grew up in a modest 1950s home where the week had a rhythm so natural she barely noticed it. Monday clearing, Tuesday tidying, Wednesday resetting. As life unfolded, raising kids, caring for loved ones, and navigating retirement, that rhythm slipped away. Her home never became chaotic, but it grew heavy with memories, keepsakes, and objects that held stories longer than she expected. Some belonged to her children, some to her late husband, and many simply stayed because deciding what to do with them felt overwhelming. She often stood in her living room thinking, "This doesn't feel like my space anymore," not from clutter, but from emotional weight. Yet every now and then, she'd remember her mother's calm 3-day household flow, though she never imagined it could still serve her at this stage of life. Before we go any further, if any part of this is stirring something familiar in you, don't just hit like, tap that new hype button. YouTube gives you 3 free hypes every week, and each one helps videos for seniors rise to the top where they belong. Swipe left on the comment preview until you see it, tap hype, pick your points, and confirm. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss the stories and rhythms made for you. House Reset 1. The Seeing Day. In the 1950s, most homemakers didn't start their mornings with heavy scrubbing or exhausting chores. They began with something much simpler and surprisingly powerful, tending to whatever their eyes noticed first. It was an unspoken rule of the time: the house feels calmer when the first glance feels calm. It wasn't about creating a spotless space, it was about giving the mind a soft landing. A cleared table here, an open counter there, a surface that wasn't shouting for attention. That gentle visual quiet shaped the emotional rhythm of the entire day. For Movella, reconnecting with this old method felt like opening a window in a stuffy room. She never considered how much her home spoke to her through sight alone. Each morning, her eyes jumped to the same spots: the mail she kept meaning to sort, the row of small bottles on her bathroom counter, the tiny collection of receipts and reading glasses beside her recliner. Not one of these things was truly a mess, but together they created a kind of visual chatter that followed her from room to room. It made her mornings feel heavier than they needed to be, like her brain was carrying too many small to-do lists before she even made her first cup of tea. The first time she tried the Seeing Day reset, she didn't declutter in any dramatic way. She simply cleared the surfaces her eyes naturally touched first. She smoothed the table she walked past every morning, gave the counter a quiet reset, and gathered the little items that had taken up long-term residency near her chair. Nothing complicated, just gentle, visible breathing room. And almost instantly, she felt something shift. The room looked the same in structure, yet entirely different in spirit. There was space for her thoughts to land, for her energy to settle, for her mind to warm up slowly instead of leaping into overwhelm. What surprised her most wasn't how quickly the reset worked, it was how deeply she felt the relief. She didn't realize how much those small everyday clusters had been pulling at her focus. Standing there afterward, she felt a lightness she hadn't known she was missing. She looked around, took a slow breath, and said quietly, "This gives me a little peace." And just like that, her day began on steadier ground. House Reset 2. The Simple Shuffle. In the 1950s, homes had a quiet ritual that happened almost without thinking. Every afternoon, usually after the last chore or before dinner, families practiced what older homemakers called the daily homecoming. It wasn't cleaning, and it wasn't decluttering, it was simply placing things back where they belonged so the house could return to its natural rhythm. Shoes went by the door, the newspaper folded and set aside, sewing supplies tucked back into their tin, dishes moved from the table to the drying rack. It was a gentle, almost musical flow of small motions, like resetting a stage before the next scene of life unfolded. This rhythm created a sense of order that didn't require effort. It allowed the home to breathe between the busyness of morning and the winding down of evening. For Marvella, the simple shuffle felt like stepping into a memory she didn't know she'd stored. She remembered how her mother used to hum softly while moving around the house, just small, peaceful movements, never hurried, never heavy. As a child, she didn't understand what it meant. She only knew the house always felt calm by dinner time. Decades later, when she tried the reset herself, she realized how much she had missed that experience of quiet, predictable ease. And unlike the intimidating pressure of modern decluttering challenges, the simple shuffle asked almost nothing from her. No sorting piles. No decision fatigue. No bending or lifting or deep cleaning. Just a few minutes of guiding objects back to where they naturally lived. When she walked through her living room and noticed the blanket draped over the arm of her chair, she folded it lightly and placed it back where it belonged. The book she left open on the table went back to its spot on the shelf. The mug from her morning tea returned to the sink. With each movement, she felt a layer of tension slip away. It was as if her home was settling beside her, matching her pace instead of competing with her energy. What surprised her most was how much comfort she found in these tiny resets. She didn't feel like she was cleaning or catching up on tasks. She felt like she was restoring harmony, the same way her mother once did with a quiet hum. By the time she finished, the space felt familiar again, lighter, steadier, more hers. She paused in the hallway, noticing how the room seemed to exhale, and whispered, "This is enough for today." And for the first time in a long time, it truly was. House Reset 3, The Heart Day. In many older households, there was a quiet tradition known only to the people who lived it, a day set aside for the sentimental drawer. Not to empty it, not to purge it, and certainly not to declutter it in the modern sense. It was a slow, gentle ritual where one item at a time was touched, remembered, and understood. The purpose wasn't to get rid of things, it was to ease emotional weight without overwhelming the heart. This old rhythm recognized something modern minimalism often ignores. Emotional objects carry layers, and older adults carry more layers than most. The Heart Day honored that truth by giving memories space to breathe, one small piece at a time. For Marvella, returning to this tradition felt both tender and frightening. She had drawers and corners filled with items that carried stories, some joyful, some bittersweet, some quietly painful. She avoided them not because she was unwilling to face them, but because they demanded more from her than she had energy to give in a single day. But the Heart Day wasn't asking for all of it, it only asked for one moment, with one item, at a pace her spirit could handle. That morning, she opened a drawer she hadn't touched in months. Inside, nestled between old birthday cards and a few faded photographs, was her late husband's small portable radio. It hadn't worked in years. He used to carry it around the house, humming along to songs she could still remember in her bones. Seeing it again made her pause. Her breath caught, not from pain alone, but from the sudden rush of memory. She sat with it in her hands, feeling the grooves her husband once traced with his thumb. She didn't push herself to decide anything. She simply held the radio, acknowledged what it once meant, and let the emotion move through her instead of avoiding it. After a few minutes, she felt a soft shift inside, like a knot loosening. She realized she didn't need to keep the broken object to keep the love. She chose to let it go, but not in a hurried or forced way. She placed it gently into a small donation bag, whispering a quiet thank you under her breath. It was a release that didn't erase anything. Instead, it made room for her to remember him with more ease and less ache. When she closed the drawer, she didn't feel drained. She felt lighter, steadier, and proud of herself for tending to her heart instead of rushing past it. The Heart Day wasn't about decluttering, it was about healing, one memory at a time. House Reset 4, The Resting Room Rule. In the 1950s, there was an unspoken household custom that today's fast-paced culture rarely acknowledges. Once a room was brought back to order, it was allowed to rest. No one rushed in to adjust things. No one added new clutter. Children were told, leave that room be until tomorrow. Homemakers believed that order needed time to settle, almost like dough resting before it rises. This wasn't superstition, it was wisdom. A room left untouched for 24 hours created a pocket of peace in a busy home. It offered a moment of stability, a visual anchor that reminded the family life didn't always have to whirl. That softness, that stillness, was considered part of the home's rhythm, not a bonus. For Marvella, discovering this old rule felt like stumbling onto a truth she didn't know she needed. She had spent years moving around her home, adjusting little things over and over, picking something up, putting it down, shifting an item just because her hands needed something to do. It wasn't intentional, it was the habit of someone who had lived through countless seasons of tending, caregiving, and managing a household. But that constant motion created a sense of never being finished. There was always one more thing calling for her attention, even if she didn't have the energy to respond. The first time she tried the resting room rule, she chose her small guest room. It wasn't a high-traffic area, and resetting it that morning felt doable. She smoothed the bedspread, stacked the books neatly on the nightstand, dusted the dresser with slow, gentle strokes. Nothing strenuous, just a soft return to order. When she stepped back, the room looked calm. Not magazine perfect, but peaceful. And then she did something she rarely allowed herself to do. She walked away. Hours later, she passed by the doorway and glanced inside. The room looked exactly the same. Nothing had shifted. Nothing had been added. Nothing had slipped back into disorder. That simple, unchanged sight sent a quiet wave of relief through her chest. It reminded her she wasn't behind. She wasn't losing control. Her effort had held. The next morning, she checked again, half expecting something to feel off. Instead, she felt a small rise of pride, like the room was cheering her on. It was proof that order doesn't disappear the moment you turn your back. For someone who often felt like life moved faster than she could keep up, seeing one peaceful space hold steady gave her a powerful sense of being on top of things again. That single restful room became her reminder that stability is possible, even in small, beautifully ordinary moments. House Reset 5. The Microwin Cycle. In 1950s households, the flow of daily upkeep was built around brief, steady tasks instead of long, exhausting cleanups. Homemakers didn't push themselves to finish everything at once. They focused on tiny moments of progress that fit naturally into the day. A quick straightening while passing through a room, a light wipe before sitting down, a simple tidy moment after a cup of tea. These small actions created a quiet rhythm, easy, repeatable, and gentle on the body. They weren't trying to conquer the whole house. They were maintaining calm in small, meaningful steps. For Marvella, embracing this cycle felt like someone had finally written a method with her in mind. At 68, her energy rose and dipped in waves. Some days her hands were stiff, some afternoons her legs felt heavier than she liked to admit, and long cleaning sessions were simply not realistic anymore. But the Microwin cycle didn't ask for stamina or long stretches of focus. It let her work with her energy instead of fighting against it, which made her feel capable rather than limited. That evening, she chose just one simple task, folding the blanket on the back of her recliner. It took seconds, yet it brought a surprising sense of relief. Then she added another tiny win, placing her reading glasses back in their usual spot. After that, she wiped a small ring from her water glass on the side table. None of it was dramatic. None of it required effort. But each action gave her a soft lift, like checking something off a list she didn't have to write. As she moved through these microwins, she noticed something unexpected. Instead of feeling behind, she felt ahead, like she was gently steering her home back into rhythm without rushing or straining. The house didn't transform in an evening, but the emotional shift was unmistakable. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't tired. She wasn't frustrated. She was steady. She was in motion. She was enough. By bedtime, the space felt calmer, and so did she. The Microwin cycle reminded her that progress doesn't need to be big to matter. Sometimes the smallest steps make the day feel lighter. House Reset 6. The Predictability Loop. In many 1950s households, mornings began the same way every single day, quick, repeatable resets that took only a minute or two. A pillow straightened, curtains pulled open, a dish put away, a towel smoothed across the counter. These small rituals weren't chores. They were the gentle rhythm that signaled the day was starting. Predictability wasn't dull back then, it was soothing. It reminded families that no matter how busy or uncertain life became, the home itself had a steady heartbeat they could rely on. For Marvella, bringing back this kind of rhythm felt like a quiet relief. Her mornings had become unpredictable over the years. Some days her energy was strong, other days she felt slower, achier, or unsure where to begin. That uncertainty often pulled her into a loop of hesitation, making even simple tasks feel heavier. But the predictability loop didn't require motivation or long stretches of energy. It simply restored the soft structure she grew up with, a pattern her body recognized even if her mind hadn't revisited it in decades. The first morning she tried it, she chose 3 tiny actions she knew she could repeat daily without strain. She opened her living room curtains to welcome a little light, straightened the cushion on her favorite chair, and rinsed her mug before placing it by the kettle. None of it took more than moments, yet doing them in the same order gave her a sense of direction. It was like sliding into a familiar melody, easy, steady, and comforting. As the days passed, she noticed the loop began to set the tone for her entire morning. She didn't have to push herself or think about what needed doing, the rhythm carried her naturally. Knowing what came next eased her anxiety and made her feel grounded before the day even began. It wasn't about productivity, it was about peace. And that consistency, those tiny predictable steps, helped her move through her home with more confidence and less pressure. Standing in her kitchen after completing the loop one morning, she felt a small but unmistakable calm settle inside her. Her home looked gently prepared, and so did she. The predictability loop didn't change her whole life, but it gave her mornings a comforting shape she could trust, and that made all the difference. House Reset 7, the memory lane check. Older generations carried a simple but powerful belief: keep the things that serve the life you're living now, not the life you've already lived. They understood that every season brings its own needs, comforts, and priorities. This wasn't about erasing the past or being strict about possessions, it was about allowing the home to reflect the person you are becoming, not just the person you once were. That gentle wisdom kept houses from feeling crowded with old chapters and helped elders move through their days with lighter hearts and clearer minds. For Marvella, this reset opened her eyes in a way she didn't expect. Over the years, she had held onto items without noticing how much they belonged to older versions of herself. Clothes from her working days, kitchen tools meant for big family gatherings, craft supplies from hobbies she enjoyed decades ago, even small souvenirs from trips she barely remembered now. None of it was clutter in the traditional sense, but each object quietly anchored her to a time she no longer lived in. She wasn't avoiding the past, she simply hadn't paused to consider whether those things still fit her life at 68. One quiet afternoon, she chose a single box from her closet. Inside were items she hadn't touched in years, scarves she no longer wore, notebooks filled with ideas from her younger seasons, jewelry that no longer matched her style, and little keepsakes with meaning that had faded over time. As she lifted each piece, she didn't feel guilt or sorrow, just a calm clarity. She realized she could honor who she used to be without holding on to everything she carried through those years. She began asking herself a gentle question: does this still belong in my life today? When the answer was no, she didn't force herself to make a dramatic decision. She simply placed the item aside, trusting that letting go didn't erase the memory behind it. Some pieces she saved for family, some she donated, and some she quietly released. With each choice, she felt a subtle shift inside, like her home was catching up to the woman she was now. By the time she finished, the room didn't look drastically different, but it felt different. Lighter, more honest, more aligned with the life she's living rather than the ones she's already lived. The memory lane check wasn't about decluttering, it was about reclaiming space for the present. House Reset 8, the company-ready corner. In older generations, it was almost a household rule. No matter how busy life became or how much the rest of the home was in progress, there was always one good corner kept ready for company. It didn't have to be fancy. It didn't have to impress anyone. It simply needed to be calm, tidy, and welcoming, a little space that said, "You're always welcome here." This tradition grew out of a time when neighbors stopped by unexpectedly, church friends came for tea, and family members dropped in without calling first. Having that one reliable corner gave the home a sense of dignity and readiness, even on the messiest days. It wasn't about perfection, it was about hospitality and pride. For Marvella, bringing back the company-ready corner stirred something warm inside her. She remembered the way her mother always kept one small area ready, a chair with a clean cushion, a side table without clutter, maybe a vase with a few fresh or dried flowers. Guests didn't need to see the whole house, they just needed to feel welcome. Over the years, as life changed and visits became less frequent, she stopped maintaining that little space. It wasn't intentional, it simply faded into the background as responsibilities piled up. But the moment she revisited the idea, she felt a soft spark of joy. It reminded her of the pride she once felt hosting family, greeting neighbors, or welcoming church friends after Sunday service. That evening, she chose a cozy corner near her favorite window, the spot where she enjoyed her tea and quiet reflection. She cleared the side table, smoothing it gently. She fluffed the cushion on the chair, giving it fresh shape. She wiped the lamp base with a clean cloth and placed one simple decorative piece beside it. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that required her to buy anything new. Just a clean, calm corner that felt intentional and cared for. When she stepped back, something shifted inside her. The corner wasn't just tidy, it felt inviting. It felt like her. What surprised her most was the pride that rose in her chest, not the pressured pride of trying to impress, but the warm pride of being ready for connection. It made her feel open to possibility again. Now, if a neighbor rang the bell or her grandkids stopped by on a whim, she wouldn't feel caught off guard. She had a place that said, "Come sit with me." The company-ready corner didn't transform her whole home, but it transformed how she felt in it. It reconnected her to the joy of sharing space, the comfort of being prepared, and the quiet confidence that even in a changing world, she could still offer warmth and welcome in her own way. House Reset 9. The Clarity Hour. In many older households, Sunday mornings carried a special kind of quiet, before church, before family visits, before the bustle of the week began again. During that stillness, elders often practiced a gentle, fresh start hour. It wasn't a deep clean or a stressful push to catch up. It was a soft moment to look around the home, breathe, and prepare the space, and themselves, for the week ahead. A folded blanket here, a small stack of papers straightened there, a minute spent tending to something that mattered. This hour wasn't about productivity, it was about grounding. It gave the home a rhythm and gave the heart a moment to settle. It created the feeling that the week began from a place of calm rather than chaos. For Marvella, bringing the Clarity Hour into her life felt like reclaiming a quiet confidence she hadn't felt in years. Her weeks sometimes blurred together, and she often found herself reacting to the messes and tasks as they appeared, instead of starting from a steady center. At 68, she needed routines that respected her energy without overwhelming her. The Clarity Hour was exactly that, a gentle anchor placed at the beginning of her week, designed to help her feel steady without asking more than she could give. When she tried it for the first time, she didn't make a list or set expectations. She simply chose a calm hour after breakfast and let the space guide her. She placed her reading glasses in their usual spot, smoothed the blanket draped across her chair, gathered 2 loose envelopes from her side table, and watered the plant by the window. Each action took only a few seconds, but together they created a quiet sense of renewal. She wasn't working hard, she was creating clarity. A little order here, a little care there, a gentle reset that reminded her she was still the one setting the tone in her home. As she continued, something shifted inside her. Instead of feeling like she was always catching up, she began to feel like she was moving with intention. She enjoyed the stillness, the slow pace, the thoughtfulness of it. The Clarity Hour didn't demand intensity, it offered presence. And that presence gave her the grounding she needed to move into her week with a calmer mind. She felt prepared without being drained, organized without pressure, and quietly proud of herself for creating a rhythm she could maintain with ease. By the time she finished, the home felt lighter, and so did she. The Clarity Hour showed her that stability doesn't require big changes, just small, consistent moments of attention. It gave her a weekly rhythm she could trust, one that honored her age, her energy, and the life she lives now. The moment Marvella stepped into her living room after completing the full 72-hour rhythm, she didn't see a perfectly styled home or a space stripped down to bare walls. She saw something far more meaningful, she saw herself reflected back. Not the younger version who once managed a bustling household or the exhausted woman who felt swallowed by years of accumulated responsibility, but the woman she is now, steady, resilient, and deserving of a home that supports her instead of silently weighing her down. As she moved from room to room, she noticed small signs of change: open surfaces, softer corners, pathways that felt safe and easy under her feet, and a comforting predictability she hadn't realized she'd been missing. It wasn't just the physical space that shifted, something internal unclenched. The quiet hum of overwhelm that had followed her for years finally dimmed, replaced by an ease she hadn't felt in a long time. Standing in her doorway, she realized her home wasn't demanding anything from her. It was offering something: calm, control, a gentle sense of ownership she feared she'd lost. The 1950s rhythm didn't just tidy her space, it revived a part of her identity that had been buried under layers of life, loss, and constant adjustment. She understood now why her mother swore by these small rituals. They weren't about maintaining a perfect home, they were about creating emotional steadiness, a home that rose to meet you rather than asking you to keep up with it. And as she watched the evening light settle across her company-ready corner, she felt a quiet pride bloom inside her. This old method worked not because it was trendy, but because it was made for real people with real lives, real memories, and real limitations. It was made for people like her, not teenagers chasing minimalism online. Before you go, if this journey resonates with you, even a little, tap that hype button. Your support helps lift senior voices higher on YouTube, making sure content made for older adults reaches the people who need it most. Scroll down, swipe left on the comment preview until you see hype, tap it, choose your points, and confirm. You get 3 free hypes each week, and every single one moves this video up where it belongs. And while you're there, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss the routines, stories, and guidance created with you in mind. Thank you for being here. This community grows because of your presence, your wisdom, and your willingness to make space for yourself again.